This is breaking news.
Mayor de Blasio is expected to sign several bills affecting commercial tenants and hotel workers at a virtual hearing. Let's go to it now.
Now, a little bit of quick history. In 2014, I signed into law historic reforms that ensured that hard-working New Yorkers would get paid sick leave. And this was something I've been worked on for years and years, and we were finally able to achieve for hundreds of thousands more New Yorkers in 2014. And it was a matter of justice and making sure that hardworking people could actually live a decent life. And now, in this pandemic, we know there's so many people who cannot afford to lose what little pay they have. And if you're sick and you are threatened with losing a day's pay because you're sick, it's an absolutely unacceptable situation. We want to make sure people are well, and we want to make sure people get the pay they deserve. So today we extend our paid sick leave laws by aligning them with recently passed New York State laws. And we provide our paid sick leave to workers in smaller businesses and ensure paid sick time. There's more paid sick time for employees in larger companies. Now, another group of folks who have really been hurt deeply during this pandemic have been our commercial tenants. Many are struggling to pay the rent because they were forced to close for a period of time, or they cannot be open the same capacity. So they're in a really tough situation. So many businesses that we all depend on in our communities that employ so many New Yorkers, including restaurants, barber shops, nail salons. And they're critical to us all and to our future. We have to provide them with some extra support and protection as well. We have legislation on that today. Finally, another piece of legislation focuses on our hotel workers. They've been at the front line of this crisis. They've borne the brunt. Our hotel workers help the city respond to this pandemic in so many ways, including helping New Yorkers who had to isolate from their families in hotels, helping folks who need to get out of congregate settings for their health and safety. And we know this industry's been through so much. So today we're going to provide stronger protections to hotel workers and also additional consumer protections for hotel guests in our city. So all of this revolves around respecting the needs of hardworking New Yorkers and acting on these needs in this unprecedented time. Let's first talk about Intro 2032A. Again, this aligns the city's paid sick leave law with the recently enacted New York State paid sick leave expansion. Now, here are the changes. It will expand paid sick leave to small businesses with 4 or fewer employees and with income of less than $1 million per year. And these employers must now provide up to 40 hours of unpaid sick leave. Now, small businesses with 4 or fewer employees with an income of over $1 million must provide 40 hours of paid sick leave under this law. And then largest businesses, those with over 100 employees, must now provide up to 56 hours of paid sick leave. Intro 2083A, this amends Local Law 55 of 2020, which temporarily prohibits the enforcement of personal liability provisions in commercial leases or rental agreements involving COVID-19 impacted tenants. And this extends the sunset date of this protection from September 30th, 2020 to March 31st, 2021. And Intro 2049A, this establishes protections for displaced hotel service workers in the event of a sale or transfer of a hotel. New owners will be required to provide existing employment and maintain wages for a period of 90 days. At the end of the 90-day period, the new employer would perform an evaluation of each worker. Intro 2049A also establishes consumer protections and notice requirements for service disruptions for guests of hotels. I want to thank many people who have been involved in moving these key pieces of legislation. Our Corporation Counsel, Jim Johnson, our Department of Consumer Worker Protection Commissioner, Laura Leigh Salas, Small Business Services Commissioner, Janelle Doris, Speaker Corey Johnson, the council member who sponsored Intro 2032A, Councilmember Andy Cohen, who is chair of the Consumer Affairs Committee in the council, and the sponsor of Intro 2049A, Councilmember Mark Levine. And now I'd like to turn to the sponsor of Intro 2083A for her to provide her comments on this very important legislation. We thank you for sponsoring it. My pleasure to introduce Councilmember Carlina Rivera. Councilmember?
Hi, everyone. Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, indeed.
Excellent. Well, good afternoon, everyone. I just want to thank you, Mr. Mayor, for signing my bill today so we can continue a critical protection for countless small business owners suffering during this COVID-19 pandemic, the suspension of personal liability clauses. In the middle of this unprecedented crisis, no small business owners should have to choose between closing their store or risking their life savings because their landlord is threatening to trigger the personal liability obligation in their leases. This extension will help ensure that when the pandemic ends, New York City will once again be a place for small businesses to thrive. We've been in contact with countless small businesses as we approach the original law's September 30th expiration date. When my team told some of these owners that you would be signing my bill today, many said it was not only a rare bright spot in a very, very dark time for New York City small businesses, but one owner even went on to say that, and I quote, "This bill has single-handedly saved the business of 13 years temporarily and will hopefully be enough to get us through this mess." So on behalf of those businesses and my constituents, I want to say thank you. Your signature will help business owners like Carl Franz, the owner of 67 Orange, who we'll hear from today, Alfonso Seque, the owner of Casa del Chef, Barbara Sibley, the owner of La Palapa, Andrew Schnippers, the owner of Schnippers, and my friend Megan Joy, owner of My Friend Duke. Now it's our responsibility as elected officials to ensure that they all have a fair shot to bounce back when this crisis is over, and this bill will go a long way to doing just that. I look forward to working with you on further solutions for small businesses and others facing challenges in my district and citywide. And of course, I want to thank the entire legal, legislative, and council staff who worked on this bill, including Kelly Taylor, Stephanie Jones, Jason Goldman, my legislative director, Jeremy Unger, my chief of staff, Pedro Carrillo, and really my entire team who has fielded calls and letters and even direct messages via social media from businesses in all 5 boroughs. I hope today is another sign to all of them that we will keep working to support our small businesses through some of the hardest months of our history. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Councilmember. Congratulations to you and your team for this really important legislation, and I really appreciate the story you told, knowing that this could help any business to survive this extraordinarily difficult time, but hopefully it's going to help a lot of businesses. We can get through to a vaccine and the rebirth of our city, and everyone will be able to benefit from the opportunity that this legislation provides. So thank you so much, Councilmember. I know we've got some individuals signed up for public testimony. Want to call out all the names in order, and if you would please each speak in this order, I'd appreciate it. First, Rich Morocco, the president of Hotel Trades Council, and then Molly Williamson, director of paid leave at A Better Balance, Marisa Centeno, the New York co-director for the National Domestic Workers Alliance, Sean Feeney, co-founder of ROAR, which is Relief for All Restaurants, and Carl Williams, who is a restaurant owner. So in that order, starting with Rich.
Hi, thank you. And thank you, Mayor de Blasio, for signing Intro 2049 into law. Thank you also to Council Speaker Johnson for shepherding it through City Council, and to Council Member Levine for being its prime sponsor, as well as all other members of the Council who so overwhelmingly voted in favor of it. This law is instrumental to protecting hotel workers and to restoring and enhancing the reputation of the industry that employs them. The hospitality industry is a linchpin in our city's economy, and hotel workers are the backbone of that industry. It's their hard work, day in and day out, that keeps this critical component of New York City's economic engine running. And that hard work is what allows them to provide a good life for themselves and their families, and to contribute to the diverse fabric of the communities in which they live. But the coronavirus pandemic has threatened all of that. It's hit the hotel sector harder than almost any other. And as a result, tens of thousands of our members are without work and more vulnerable to financial stresses than they've ever been. But thanks to this law, hotel workers won't have to worry that they'll lose their jobs when a hotel changes hands. And while this protection is always important, it's especially critical now during these turbulent times when so many hotels are at risk of foreclosure and where vulture funds are circling distressed hotels. Because of Intro 2049, we no longer need to worry that profiteers will acquire these hotels and try to unceremoniously shed themselves of the workforce, to put people that have been working there for years out on the streets, often with no notice at all, something that we have, by the way, seen all too often in the parts of the industry where workers don't have the protection of a union contract. And thanks to this law, travelers will be able to confidently book a room in New York City from the comfort of their own home, knowing that when they arrive, they'll get exactly what they expected and what they paid for. Providing consumers with advance notice of service disruptions, like the unavailability of working elevators for disabled patrons, or the absence of promised amenities like a refrigerator that a diabetic traveler may need to keep her insulin cool, or internet access for a business traveler who needs it to do her work, or a strike or picket line protesting the mistreatment of hotel employees. It means that those customers will not be unpleasantly surprised when they arrive to our city. And hopefully, they'll feel confident enough to return here and restart this vital part of our economy, bringing back the jobs that we so desperately need. So on behalf of our almost 40,000 members, and on behalf of hotel workers across the city, thank you, Mr. Mayor, thank you, Councilmember Levine, and thank you to Speaker Johnson and the rest of the City Council for showing us that you care about hotel workers and that you have our backs. Thank you again.
Thank you so much, Rich. And Rich, I know you put a lot of time personally into this legislation and making sure that it would reach all the people we need to protect. I want to thank you for that effort, and I want to congratulate you and all your members for this important step forward. Let's turn now to Molly.
Thank you, Mayor de Blasio. My name is Molly Williamson, and I'm Director of Paid Leave and Future of Work at A Better Balance, a national legal nonprofit based right here in New York City. In 2013, A Better Balance helped draft and negotiate the Paid Sick Days bill that Mayor de Blasio signed into law, improvements into law, which became in effect in April 2014, giving millions of New York City workers the right to paid sick time. This year, we were proud to help secure paid sick time for workers across the state of New York, the first provisions of which will go into effect this week. Today's legislation, Intro 2032A, will strengthen and improve the city's law, ensuring that the Department of Consumer and Worker Protection can continue their excellent and essential enforcement of the city's landmark law. We're especially proud to support changes providing greater rights for domestic workers, whose essential work makes all other work possible. The law will also remove the waiting period to use paid sick time, allowing workers to use their time as soon as it is earned. These and other important improvements in the law will make a meaningful difference to workers across the 5 boroughs, like those we hear from each day through our free legal hotline. We thank the mayor for his continued leadership on this issue, along with the Speaker, Councilmember Cohen, and the Council as a whole for their swift and decisive action in passing this legislation. Now more than ever, all workers deserve the time they need to care for themselves and their families when they're sick. Today's legislation will further strengthen the city's already powerful commitment to this essential cause. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Molly. Thank you for all you and your colleagues did back in 2014, and you have never let up and continue seeing it through right to now. So thank you and congratulations to you. And now let's hear from Marisa.
Thank you, Mayor de Blasio. My name is Marisa Centeno, and I am the New York Co-Director for the National Domestic Workers Alliance. We are a mostly women of color-led organization that stands up and fights for the dignity and fairness of the over 2.5 million domestic workers across the country. And here in New York City alone, we represent the over 250,000 domestic workers that go to work every day, hidden behind closed doors, yet are the essential workers that keep this city running because they're taking care of our families and our homes. And this pandemic was severe and swift in its negative effects on the domestic worker industry and sector. Domestic workers who are largely women of color were facing a trifecta of crises. One of the health crises during the COVID pandemic itself, the other of the economic fallout because of immediate negative effects of domestic workers, and also because of the racialized violence that was happening across this country. And so with the intent of passing 2032, we really want to thank the leadership of New York City's council, of the sponsors, Councilmember Cohen and Levine, and the speaker for pushing this bill through, and also for the mayor for seeing how important it is that we need to be on the forefront of worker rights. In 2010, New York State passed the very first of its kind Bill of Rights for domestic workers. And this is the 10-year anniversary. And this is a bittersweet celebration because in those 10 years, we've learned how much further we have to go to assure rights for some of the most vulnerable workers in this city and in this country itself. We were hearing during the pandemic of workers, countless number of workers who had been fired almost immediately, and others who had to choose between telling their employer, do I let them know I'm not feeling well, or can I pay my rent? And we heard of countless of domestic workers who, once upon telling their employers that they were not feeling well or may have been in contact with someone who had COVID, were fired immediately. And these paid sick days are essential for domestic workers to keep the city moving and running and to keep doing the much needed care work that they do for all of us. And so it's time that we are caring for domestic workers as much as they are caring for us. And so I want to thank you again for assuring that domestic workers have the full intent of the paid sick leave law here in New York City, and we're able to move forward in assuring that domestic workers and the women across the city are able to really take full advantage of the paid sick days, not have to wait 1 year, and have that assurance that they can go to work the next day. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Marisa, and thank you for the great work that you do and everyone at the Domestic Workers Alliance. And you continue to make progress, and we thank you for that. Now we have Sean. Sean,
thank you, Mr. Mayor.
There you go. How you doing?
Thank you.
There you go.
Good. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak today regarding Intro 2083A on behalf of Real Relief Opportunities for All Restaurants. ROAR was created in March by a group of restaurateurs to support our industry and, most important, our workers during this unprecedented crisis, and to advocate for reforms that would help our industry come out of this crisis stronger than before, the New York way. I'd also like to thank Councilmember Rivera and Speaker Johnson for sponsoring this legislation and their leadership on these issues. Restaurants are the largest private employer in the city. The restaurant industry here has been hit harder than any other industry in any state. Our density, dependence on public transportation, high cost of living, and soaring occupancy expenses create the perfect storm here in New York City, unlike anywhere else in our country. As we get back on our feet, restaurants of all sizes will need to be reimagined to accommodate the new reality of costly health and safety protocols for staff, social distancing for our guests, loss of event and catering revenue, increasing costs for packaging for takeout and delivery, new fees for third-party delivery vendors, potential future and unknown disruptions, all risks to our businesses. The legislation before you is an important protection as we make this recovery. Prior to the onset of the pandemic, many restaurant owners had personal guarantees on their leases, as long as they were in possession of the premises. These clauses were designed to protect landlords from tenants being open and operating, but not paying rent. Restaurants have been faced with an unprecedented current situation. Tenants are technically in possession, but cannot operate or have had their operations greatly limited by government order in response to this ongoing public health crisis. It is detrimental enough that many small business owners fear losing their business, but now they're in the fear of losing their personal home or worse, their savings. The Council's passage of Intro 1932A earlier this summer provided real relief and assurance to business owners as they spoke to their landlords and determined their future ability to operate in the city. As restrictions remain in place and business operations cannot safely return to normal, many restaurant owners fear losing their personal savings in the coming weeks. Intro 2083A will provide assurance and relief to many of us in the restaurant business who are faced with an impossible choice and enormous uncertainty in the coming months. On behalf of Roar, thank you for signing this legislation and your continued support of restaurants in New York City in advance. New York City always does come back. It will do so this time with restaurants, I'm sure of it. And together we will remake it here. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Sean, and I appreciate your absolutely accurate optimism about the future of the city, and I think every time a New Yorker says it out loud, it helps to tell the naysayers that we, in fact, are going to come back, and this industry is going to come back strong, so thank you very much. And finally, we have Carl. Carl, you there?
Yes. Good afternoon, and thank you, Mr. Mayor. My name is Carl Franz Williams, and I am the owner of 67 Orange Street, a bar and restaurant in New York City, named after the last known address of Almack's Dance Hall, one of the first Black-owned bars in New York City. We specialize in elevated mixology, craft cocktails, and American comfort food. For all bar and restaurant owners, this pandemic has created incredible uncertainty. Uncertainty about how long the impact will last, how consumer demand may shift, what we can actually earn, and if there is any additional support or stimulus coming. This has forced us to make a very unique calculus. How much risk is really worth it? Should we keep going or cut our losses? For Black entrepreneurs, our well-documented lack of access to capital is a particularly difficult decision. Landlords have always had all the power. They've often refused to lease to us in prime areas, forcing us into the fringes. Many have traditionally taken a hard line when it comes to working with us. In addition, we have financed our businesses with our life savings, our loans from family and friends. Losing our businesses due to the pandemic will devastate us and our communities. But the idea that we could lose all we have and be stuck with a long-term liability or judgment due to a personal guarantee or rent obligation, auto rent obligation, is incredibly daunting. This legislation helps to shift the balance of power, giving us for the first time an opportunity to negotiate fairly and frankly with our landlords. It also takes away the fear that we could suffer financially for potentially a lifetime. We can focus on making the best, most frank business decisions possible without this added risk. I would like to thank you, Mr. Mayor, the City Council, and particularly Councilwoman Rivera for supporting our industry and protecting our futures with this very important legislation.
Thank you, Carl, and thank you for laying out so clearly the challenges that you're facing and so many other people of color are facing trying to keep industries going in this moment. And it is so important that we support you because of what you do for this city and this economy, but also as a matter of fairness to ensure that actually everyone gets to participate in the economy of this city. So thank you very much for your comments. Everyone, we're going to do a few words in Spanish summarizing what we're doing today before I sign the legislation. Hoy firmo leyes que protegen a los neoyorquinos que más lo necesitan. Trabajadores que no tienen días de enfermedad pagados. Pequeños negocios que no pueden pagar renta. Trabajadores de hoteles. Estas leyes ayudarán a todos estos neoyorquinos a salir adelante en esta crisis y se aseguran de que el futuro de la ciudad sea más justo para todos. With that, let's sign this legislation.
We're going to do 8 hands, sir.
Again?
8.
8, just evenly across?
Yep.
That is Councilmember Cohen's bill. This is Councilmember Rivera's bill. And Councilmember Levine's bill. All right. All three of these bills are now law. Thank you to everyone who's participated today and everyone who worked hard on these pieces of legislation. Congratulations to all, and this hearing is now adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone.